Bye, boys.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. How you doing? Good morning.
You guys get to see me in the parade.
Yeah, right? I'm going for one for now.
Yeah, same. Everyone do yours? Yeah. Yeah.
Mel. How you doing?
Command decision right there, folks. Robin had to open them up. What happened? I love it. I was wondering what looked different.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Commander Tinney, the council is organized and the organizations are fully prepared for service. Troops, attention. Troops, parade, rest.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here at the Quincy's annual Veterans Day Parade and Ceremony. I'd like to recognize a special guest we had with us during the parade, Mr. Lou Pasquale. Lou is in his vehicle, unable to come out and join us. He'll be going back home, but Lou is a World War II veteran. He was wounded in Okinawa in 1945. He has been a larger-than-life presence in the veteran community and a staple at the Phillips Candy House in Dorchester. Thank you, Lou, for joining us today. I'd like to ask Reverend John Swanson for the invocation, please.
Thank you, Christine. I tend to be Emily Post as far as flag etiquette. And this morning I got up and I was going to walk down to the Squantum Yacht Club where I belong and make sure the flag was at half staff. I said, you know, I better check that. And I went online, of course, and this is not Memorial Day. This is Veterans Day. This is a day of pride. Flags at full staff. We're honored, all of us, to have worn the uniform of the United States. And reminded of the words of the poet, Sir Walter Scott. Breathe there a man whose soul so dead, who has himself has not said, this be my own, my native land, whose heart within him has not burned, as home his footsteps he hath turned, on wandering on a foreign soil. Bless, O Lord God, these proceedings. Thank you, Lord God, for the honor it has been for so many of us to wear the uniform of the United States. God bless America. Amen.
Troops, attention. Parade, rest.
Please join me in welcoming Quincy Police Officer Dawn Sauter, who will lead us in the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Now I'd like to introduce Mike Norton, who's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Mike is in the 6th grade? 5th grade at Marymount School.
Too short to stand up here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Troops, order arms. Parade rest.
Next, I'd like to bring up the Junior Vice Commander, Allie Sleeman, who will be reading the Governor's Proclamation.
A proclamation. Whereas since the Commonwealth's colonial days, thousands of men and women have served our country in defense of freedom and liberty. And whereas on November 11th, 1918, the armistice was signed in the forecast of Compiègne of the Allied nations in Germany, ending World War I, the war to end all wars after 4 years of conflict. And whereas since that day, every November, people from around the nations have gathered to honor our veterans. And whereas there are approximately 300,000 veterans living in Massachusetts, and whereas today we are reminded of the great sacrifices and contributions that our veterans have made to our country, and whereas we honor and salute those who have served our country throughout the generations with honor, patriotism, and courage, and whereas it is appropriate that all Massachusetts citizens remember the bravery of all those who serve their country, so that their dedication and sacrifices serve as a reminder of the cost of our freedom, and whereas in November 2022, the world will commemorate the 104th anniversary of the armistice that ended the fighting in World War I at 11 a.m. on November 11th, 1918, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. Now, therefore, I, Charles D. Baker, Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim November 11th, 2022 to be Veterans Day.
Would Dan Tenney, Quincy Veteran Council Commander, please join us?
Good morning, veterans, visitors, distinguished guests. I'm Daniel Tinney, the current commander of the Quincy Veterans Council. My military service began in June of 1978, going through basic training in military police school at Fort McClellan, Alabama. On graduating, I was sent to Gießen, Germany, and served with the 202nd Military Police Company, providing security for the weapons and personnel of 2 field artillery battalions and a Lance missile battalion. In March of 1981, I graduated from the American Primary Leadership Course in Bad Tolz, Germany, and my honorable discharge in 1982. I've been active with veterans organizations in the city since then, and I'm currently enrolled with American Legion Post 95, the oldest post in the city, as they say. I wish the incoming commander, Stephen Dundley, and his cadre well in 2023, and will be supporting the council going forward. Thank you.
It is my honor to introduce to you our mayor, Mayor Thomas P. Koch.
Thank you, Christine. Commander Tenney, Captain Hill, distinguished platform guests, Gold Star Mother Gladys Caldwell, Father Charlie Caldwell, thank you for being here. We remember Mrs. Gargano, Gold Star Mother, who passed away just recently and will be waked on Sunday, the mother of a Marine killed in action. I want to acknowledge all our veterans here today. On behalf of a grateful city, say thank you for your service. It doesn't sound like enough, but I know in the tradition of our city, I think we do it well, and it's thanks to the veterans that keep us on task to do it well. I see in the crowd, I want to acknowledge Joe McConville. He's a sailor, Navy veteran in the back. Happens to be the father of General James McConville, who's the Chief of Staff of the Army as we speak, leading one of the largest organizations, if not the largest in the world. Great to see you, Joe. I also want to give a warm welcome to Captain Hill. Captain, if you read the resume in the Quincy Sun, pretty remarkable background. He was actually a political science major, so I am glad he chose the Navy, because he might be sitting in my seat if he stuck around. Welcome to Quincy, welcome home, Captain. Just a note of gratitude to everybody involved today putting this together. And you don't have to think too hard why we need to continue to support the military, why we need our men and women who serve in uniform all around the world to keep the world safe. Just look at Korea for an example. Not for the United States parting with South Korea, we know it would be different. Look at what's happening in the South Pacific with China flexing their muscles. And obviously the crime that's going on with the invasion of the Ukraine with Russia. We cannot be foolish and think we don't need the military, as some would say. We spend too much in the military, quite the contrary. If not for the men and women who serve in our military, the world would be very, very different. And I'm also mindful that we have those men and women serving around the world as we stand here and enjoy our freedoms. They are sacrificing, they are working hard to protect our freedoms. And I know a number of young Quincy kids are part of that contingent. So on behalf of the city of Quincy, to our veterans, thank you, and God bless.
Next, I'd like to ask Councilor President Noel DeBona to come up and speak.
Thank you, Christine. Good morning. Before I say a few words, I want to recognize other elected officials that are here today. Other City Council members from Ward 1, Dave McCarthy, at-large Councilor Ann Mahoney, at-large Councilor Nita Liang, and from the School Committee, Kathy Hubley, Tina Cahill, and Doug Gutrow. Also from the Norfolk County District Attorney Michael Morrissey, State Representative Bruce Ayers, and State Representative Tacky Chan. As I was getting ready this morning, we had the TV set on, honoring our veterans on TV. My little daughter looked over at me, Nora, she's in the 1st grade at Marymount Elementary School, and she said, "Daddy, where you going?" I says, "We're getting ready for the Veterans Day Parade." She says, "Oh, really? I learned about the Veterans Day Parade yesterday in school." I said, "That's really great. That's a big kudos to the Quincy Public Schools and our teachers that are teaching the Veterans Day. Thank you." We gather here today to honor our heroes, our United States military veterans. You know, we are very fortunate here to continue our tradition here in Quincy, Massachusetts, with a nice Veterans Day parade and ceremony. It's a beautiful day out there. Where other towns and cities throughout the state have discontinued their parades, the city of Quincy, along with the Quincy Veteran Services, continues to preserve our tradition to honor our veterans. So thank you to everyone that participated in the parade. Thank you to everyone that is here today. And thank you to all veterans for your service to our country. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce a North Quincy High School graduate of class of 1992. He left Quincy, went to school at Tufts University where he joined the ROTC. He was a political science major, then went on to graduate at Georgetown University, School of Foreign Service with a master's degree in security studies with honors. And in 2016, he graduated from the Naval Nuclear Power Training Program. He was commissioned through the Navy ROTC program and received his Wings of Gold as a naval flight officer in 1997. As a naval officer, he participated in operations like Southern Watch, Desert Fox, Deliberate Forge, Enduring Freedom, and Inherent Resolve. He was stationed on board the USS George H.W. Bush CVN-77 from 2017 to 2019 as the executive officer, participating again in Operation Inherent Resolve. After the USS George H.W. Bush, he was stationed on board the USS Arlington LPD-24 as the commanding officer. Shore assignments include Naval Flight Weapons School, Top Gun, from 2001 to 2003 as Command and Control Instructor and Editor of the NSA WC Journal. He is currently the incoming commanding officer of the aircraft carrier USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, CVN-69. Please join me in welcoming Captain Chris Chowda Hill.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for allowing me to talk today to honor Veterans Day. To honor those who served, all sailors, airmen, soldiers, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen, and their families. And yes, I include families here because of the sacrifices they have to make day in and day out. Thank you, Mayor Koch. It was great to meet you, fellow North Quincy High School class president, separated by 11 years, right? And thank you, Christine, for finding me. And I think she found me on LinkedIn. But it's great to see some old friends. I got some friends from church, and my Auntie Chris is here, and a lot of friends from high school I got to see today. And I want to say thank you to all who just showed up today. Veterans and supporters of veterans. It says a lot about your character and commitment to all the values that make America special. Now, last time I did anything like this in Quincy, I think it was in 96 or 97. I was an ensign. I didn't know what the heck I was talking about. I was at Montclair Elementary School talking to kids, and they were asking crazy questions. Some I can't even mention here, but my operational experience was zero. But a few things have changed in the last 26 years, and I'm in the Navy, as she said. It's not an airline pilot uniform. and technically not a veteran yet. I think I have to retire to do that, and I'm not sure how that process works. But yes, I've deployed on multiple aircraft carriers throughout the years. It's kind of my main thing, flying the E-2C Hawkeye, which is a funny-looking airplane with a big disc on the top. And did deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, and also in the Western Pacific. But I also commanded an E-2 squadron on the USS George H.W. Bush, CVN-77. And then after that, I ended up becoming an aviator nuke. It's a term we use, which allows you to go become CO of an aircraft carrier. And I got to work with Marines for the first time finally on LPD-24 USS Arlington, the best damn ship in the Navy. And next up, like she said, I'll be on another aircraft carrier in the Eisenhower. It's an old ship, but it's probably the toughest ship in the Navy. It's a weird thing in the Navy where by law, aircraft carriers are commanded by aviators with experience flying from aircraft carrier, which I guess makes sense. But they also make you learn how to operate nuclear reactors and drive warships. It's a very interesting career. But the real benefit is that I get to lead thousands of sailors, young and old, who I want to talk about here in a minute. But before that, I need to make sure you understand I'm not an imposter, and I did not abandon my Quincy roots, okay? Most of my family still lives here in the surrounding area. My brother still lives in the house we grew up in Montclair, and it's the same house that my great-grandmother grew up in more than 100 years ago. So the veterans here can tell you that when you join the military and you move away, you pick up some bad habits and language from people from all around the United States. But you can never take away the Boston or the Quincy or the South Shore out of the man or woman, no matter how hard you try. Am I right? Things don't change. People from this area, I think, are different. And from time to time, I'll bump into a kid on the ship from Quincy, Braintree, Dorchester, Weymouth, or wherever, and we all have similar traits. It's not just our obvious love for the sports teams. That makes sense. But I think there are 5 things that we all have in common. And our veterans can back me up on this. First, people from this area have an increased level of toughness, the origins of which I cannot understand. It just is what it is. I think that the fact that we think we're tough actually makes us tough. Some type of psychology there, but it works. Second, for some reason, we cuss a lot, to borrow a Southern term. I'll just leave it at that, but we're good at it. The third thing we have in common is we also walk faster than any other normal human being. And some people says it has to do with cold weather. And if you've ever been to Alabama, that parade would have taken an hour longer than ours, right? And fourth, we have allowed a certain donut establishment to become profitable outside of New England, thanks to our dedication to a certain regular coffee. Am I wrong? And fifth, this is important, we maintain a healthy skepticism of authority. We demand accountability from our leaders, and we try to involve ourselves in those decisions. It's sort of like a, oh yeah, prove it to me attitude, which could get you in trouble in the military, and I've gotten in trouble for it before, but I think the best leaders can anticipate this and explain the rationale behind their decisions. I think leaders need negative feedback sometimes. It should be considered a gift, and I think in this area, people are really good at giving that gift. Right? It's a very political town. Now, all these candidates, all these qualities, I think, make people from the South Shore enclave, ideal candidates for military service. The questioning attitude, the fast walking, the toughness. Again, our veterans here can back me up because they saw it firsthand after they signed up. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was visiting another ship last year in Norfolk, and I was on the other side of the pier on the USS Arlington. And he was leaving that other ship, and his aides and his security was scurrying behind him. And I yelled out, "Hey, sir, why don't you come over here to the best damn ship in the Navy?" And he turned and looked at me, and he beelined in my direction, which frustrated all the plans of his aides and security. But after a few words, he asked where I was from. I said, "Quincy." Next thing you know, we're talking, and he validates all those 5 things I just told you about people from this area. And it turns out that General Milley is from Winchester, Massachusetts, and both his parents served in the Navy and participated in World War II. How about that? So, thanks. I hope I've reestablished my credentials, because I have made it one of my personal missions to make sure I represent you and never let you down. Nobody who leaves this region should ever forget where they come from. And I can say with confidence that every veteran here took enormous pride in representing their hometown when they left. And so, while we're at it, if you're a veteran, please raise your hand so I can see who you are out there. Look around you. We have some in uniform, some are not. Thank you for everything you've done representing your country and your people and your hometown. It means a lot. Now back to something else I wanted to talk about, if I may, which is what the Navy is doing today. To give you a report, especially about the people, many of which are young men and women, most of whom are no older than about 22 years old. The U.S. Navy, as you know, is multifaceted with its own Air Force, centered largely around the striking power of the world's most lethal, most survivable warships ever built, your 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, each with the ability to deploy anywhere over 70% of the planet with 4.5 acres of sovereign U.S. soil on every flight deck. In fact, this year in 2022 is the 100th anniversary of the first U.S. Navy aircraft carrier, which was CV-1 USS Langley. So I have to mention this to support the naval aviation community, of course. And our newest aircraft carrier is the USS Gerald R. Ford, which is actually out at sea right now, and they're preparing for a deployment hopefully next year. But we have dozens of destroyers, cruisers, submarines, and other combat ships to include our amphibious fleet to deliver and support Marines ashore. Our SSBN submarine fleet is always at sea as a nuclear deterrent to prevent nuclear war. We have naval special warfare, such as special boat teams and Navy SEALs, which I'm sure you've heard about, who are deployed right now all over the world. And at this moment, the USS George H.W. Bush Strike Group, my former ship 2 ships ago, is deployed to Europe to support defense of NATO allies. And we have a couple other strike groups deployed in the Western Pacific right now to deter bad decisions by foreign leaders who don't care about freedom. The U.S. Navy is your first line of defense for all worst possible scenarios. We never really stand down. We live in the nebulous gray zone between war and peace, and we expect to be the first to fight, and we prepare for it daily. By the way, I'm not reading a speech that someone wrote for me. This is speaking from the heart. Sometimes I overshare, so bear with me. From a security standpoint, I would like to say that we live in a unique time, but we actually don't. We in the national security community at large consider ourselves in a state of great power competition, abbreviated GPC. And we've been here before as early as the ramp up to World War II. In GPC, the U.S. is not necessarily the only dominant military force. There are other rising militaries. Our adversaries, without mentioning names, have made extraordinary strides in technology and to basically compete against us and to compete against our forces. And we could, of course, shy away or deny this, but instead we're doing the right thing, which is to adapt and get better. Some people argue that no great power would hazard away its own economic gain and go against the U.S. and its allies, but Russia has already broken that theory if you consider what's going on in the Ukraine. Also, some people have wondered, for example, if we can get better in the military given various changes in society today. You hear a lot of talk about that. In fact, there are some that say that this next generation of young men and women aren't cut out for the military service, and they like to make unscientific claims like Generation Z is less into work or self-entitled or always questioning things. And I'll be frank with all of you, and hopefully I don't offend anybody, but those who mock the younger generation are dead wrong. It turns out it is a standard gimmick to malign younger generations across the ages. Aristotle even did it more than 2,300 years ago when he talked about the youth of his day. I have seen so many young people, warrior sailors in my case, display extraordinary acts of heroism, save people's lives, rushed at fires, or raced into combat despite every instinct telling them otherwise. No different than any other generation. Those that fought in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and the most recent wars are no different than each other, and coincidentally no different than the young men and women who work for me, 18 to 22-year-olds. Why? It's because the biochemistry and capacity of the human brain has not changed in hundreds of thousands of years. So I don't play the age bias game. I rely on today's generation to do the right thing and to support and defend the Constitution every single day. I have to work with and motivate warriors of all ages, so I don't bother with biases against my own people. That would be a waste of time. Let's take another snapshot. At this very moment, there is a 19-year-old sailor repairing a missile battery while his shipmates are manning sonar scopes to track threat submarines, just like we did in the Cold War. There's a 20-year-old warrior sailor manipulating control rods on a legitimate nuclear reactor on an aircraft carrier. Right now, we have a handful of 21-year-olds geared up in wetsuits, airborne in helicopters, prepared to conduct search and rescue in the most inhospitable conditions. There's a corpsman right now, fresh out of high school, sewing up a wound. And there's a young special operator wearing night vision goggles on a surveillance mission who probably had his or her high school graduation canceled because of COVID. That's how young they are. None of this is in the news, of course, but it's happening right now. So what has changed? Technology, yes. People, no. I also want to say that despite the change in strategic paradigm with increased adversary capabilities, I can tell you that despite anything you hear, the U.S. military can still win in this environment. Why? Because we Americans are different from our adversaries. We actually support a constitution that gives individual people freedom and hope. We value and encourage people to use their imaginations and be creative. There's a Soviet military manual that's alleged to have said, quote, "A serious problem in planning against American doctrine is that the Americans do not read their manuals, nor do they feel any obligation to follow their doctrine." And I'd say, yes, we follow our doctrine and our manuals, but we're obliged to deviate from it in order to do the right thing in the moment. That's an American thing, it's what we do. America also has a number of key allies who think a lot like us and who are willing to sacrifice themselves as well to defend principles of freedom and democracy around the world. These are the strategic advantages that our current adversaries will never have, and this is why we will win. Now, at the same time, I hope and pray that my saying all these things acts as a sincere deterrent to prevent adversaries from making bad choices. I think we'd all rather peace over war. So in closing, I want to commend and thank all veterans, past and present, and future, because I know we have active duty here, for all the sacrifices you made to our country, and let's extend that thank you to the families who served, of those who served, and their sacrifices too. My wife Kristen would appreciate that. And to remember our buddies who can't be here today, those that made the ultimate sacrifice or who suffered after their service. They cannot be forgotten. But to properly honor all of you, especially those present here today, I want you all to know that your U.S. military has the watch. That's a Navy term. And we will never let you down. This is a mandate that hundreds of thousands of active duty men and women today respect and remain committed to. Let there be no question that America's sailors, soldiers, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen will continue to uphold the same warrior spirit of those that came before them, our brothers and sisters in the profession of arms, no matter what age you are. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got this. Thank you, and God bless America.
Wow. I think I want to join again. I don't think they'll take me, but I'll try anyway. And I'm sure a lot of you feel the same way. Let me get my bearings. I'm so sorry. May I ask the past commanders of the Quincy Veterans Council to please come forward, as well as Midshipman Kira Sleeman. Is Kira here? Please escort Mr. and Mrs. Codwell as we present the Gold Star wreath. Before we conclude the ceremony today, I'd like to say thank you to all of you for coming out and being here. It is so important that we continue to recognize our veterans, show appreciation to our veterans, and remember their sacrifices. To all of our veterans and their families, here at home or watching at home, thank you for your service.
Troops, attention. Now have the playing of taps and salute. Ready? Two.
That concludes our ceremony for today. Thank you all so much for coming out. Happy Veterans Day to our veterans. Thank you to the families. Thank you, Mayor Koch. Thank you to all the departments that contribute and make this day happen. Thank you. Enjoy the day.